Their election day is tomorrow. Already, voters are starting to head to the polls a little more than 24 hours from now.
Yeah, the big race, of course, we've been following is the New York gubernatorial campaign, but there are key local races that could have big impact on our area.
Oh, yeah. To break down what you need to know before you head to the polls, we want to bring in David Birdsell, provost at Kean University. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Birdsell, a big story of this governor's race is just how close the polls have become. Many expected the incumbent Democrat in this very Democratic state, Kathy Hochul, to win easily against Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin. But in this final full day of campaigning, you see her trying really hard to draw in voters. So what do these candidates need to be focusing on right now?
Well, both of these candidates right now are going to be focusing on turnout, as well as the key issues that they believe have propelled their success so far. For Lee Zeldin, that has meant crime, and the border, with a little sprinkle of the economy as well. But clearly, New Yorkers are concerned about their own safety and about the safety of their communities. Governor Hochul had not responded effectively to that challenge, didn't believe it was a huge issue, given, in fact, not terribly sharp rises in crime if we look at the data, but that doesn't necessarily speak to the way that people feel. She pivoted about 2 weeks ago. She needs to get people to the polls and convince people that that pivot is genuine. Obviously, we're in the final hours of this campaign at this stage, so there's not a lot of time left to sell that deal.
So here's the thing, though, with New York being so overwhelmingly Democrat a state, in order for a Republican to win a gubernatorial contest, you have to get about a third of the people in New York City who are normally 6-1 Democrat to Republican, around that number. You got to get a third of them to come to your side. So how are things looking right now for Lee Zeldin in terms of those numbers?
Well, it's still a daunting challenge for Lee Zeldin. Right now, the polls have Kathy Hochul, this is an average of the polls now, up about 8 points. So this is still her race to lose, as it should be for any Democratic governor who's coming in untainted by scandal or any other major issues that should try to break that Democratic momentum. I voted early this last weekend, and there were huge lines, actually, at voting places in Manhattan over the course of the weekend. That's probably good news for Kathy Hochul.
Let's talk about the balance of power. This is a really, really big question here. We have several local races in our area, and the midterms actually could shift the balance in Washington. What are the critical races to watch, and how likely could that shift happen?
Well, I'm very interested in the races in the Hudson Valley that had been thought to be relatively safe Democratic races, and including from the person who's leading the Democratic campaign committee for the House, Sean Patrick Maloney, who looks like he could be in a fight for his political life up in the southern reaches of the Hudson Valley right now in a newly redrawn district. Remember, this is all happening on the back of a redistricting process that the Democrats tried to push through with very strongly favorable democratically drawn districts, but those were erased by a court and redrawn by a special master. And we're finding that those races are indeed much more competitive in many key locations in the state. And of course, the state lost 2 House seats in that process. So regardless of how you cut it, there will be fewer New Yorkers of either party representing the state in Congress next year.
Which is kind of surprising. Well, we knew that that could potentially happen because we've seen a reduction anyway in the population of New York State over the last decade or so. But for those what would be traditional blue seats in the Hudson Valley to even go purple at this point is, I'm sure, a big surprise to analysts such as yourself and, of course, to the average voter like us. At this point, what would you say to people who are still trying to make up their minds at the last minute?
Well, you really need to ask several questions. You need to think about what kinds of policies the people you're voting for can actually affect. Let me take, for example, the people who are campaigning on economic issues and inflation, particularly at the gubernatorial level. Governors can't do much about inflation. In fact, governors really can't do anything about inflation. They might be able to change the profile of family spending at the state level through tax policies and that sort of thing. But in terms of direct effects on the price of gasoline, direct effects on the price of milk and eggs, nothing really that a governor can do. And so thinking about how government actually works and what the people who are asking to be elected to office can do once in that office becomes very, very important. And that's a question that is equally valid for Republicans and Democrats when they're trying to think about whom to support if they haven't voted early when they walk to the voting places tomorrow.
A very, very important election. Hopefully a lot of people get out to the polls tomorrow. David Birdsell, thank you so much. Provost at Kean University, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right.